All right, Colin, welcome back.
Yeah, Mark, how you doing, mate? Good to see you again.
Good to
My
see you.
goodness.
I had such a great time talking with you last time.
Yeah, I had a good time as well. Well, I like today's subject. I've been thinking about it, risk. And
that's where we ended last time. Last talk.
Well, I think there's lots you can say about risk, but what I feel about risk is it feeds the soul, it feeds the spirit. You can either sit on the couch and watch other people taking risk, or you can get off the couch and go and take risks yourself. And I think the idea of risk is, without risk, you are nothing. Without risk, you haven't tested yourself. And if you haven't tested yourself, you don't know what's within. You must take the risk. And when you think about it, every risk you've ever taken invariably pays off some way. Weird as that sounds. I came to America by sailing a leaky wooden boat 6,800 miles from Africa, and ended up in the Caribbean, and flew from there straight up to Miami, which I looked at the map, and there's a big city of Miami, and I knew that there was a big newspaper there. Of course, there's a big newspaper in every city in those days. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to work for that. I'm going to work for that paper. Now, I've been in the country about 3 days, and I walk into the Miami. I find out where the Miami Herald is, get a cab there, and I find out where the editorial office is and wait there until I see where the his office is, and I see he's got a secretary there. Of course he's got a secretary there. So wait till the secretary has slipped out, done something. I dash right in, and the editor was Larry Jinks. And he says, "What are you doing here? How did you get in here?" I said, "I walked through the door." And he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist from Australia. I've just come from Africa." And he says, "Well, we got no vacancies here. How did you get here?" I said, "On a 34-foot yacht that kept sinking. I came from Africa." He said, "You sailed a boat from Africa?" I said, "Yeah. No motor, no radar, just a sextant. The way they sailed boats thousands of years ago. And then they got a sextant." And I says, any idiot can work a sextant out. And he was fascinated right off then. He was totally fascinated, because it turns out that he was a yachty, had a boat on Biscayne Bay, and that's what he did. He was a yachty. And so because of that risk, I got a job as a reporter. And so happens then it's very easy to, because if you can write, if you can write, you're fine. If you can't write, well, you've got no business being a reporter. But I'm a good writer. That's what I spent my life doing. While other people got educated, I read books and learned how to write. And that's about it. But I was very, very successful almost immediately. But the assignment editor didn't like me because he didn't hire me. Larry Jinks, the editor, hired me, and Larry was above him. So he just was really nasty to me. And I thought, well, I'll just go and find my own story. So I went on. It was July 3 then. The day was July 3, and I went on. I'm thinking, well, July 4 is tomorrow. That's big celebration in America, July 4. Wow, celebrating independence. Great idea. And if you've read the Declaration of Independence, it's pretty insightful. If you don't like the government, toss them out. That's the basic line of the Declaration of Independence. So I typed up the first half a dozen paragraphs, went out in the streets of Miami, I'm going to do my own story, and asked people to sign the Declaration of Independence. To my absolute horror and shock, 80% of the people didn't even recognize the document. I'm really shocked at this, because coming over in that little boat, which was sinking all the time, I studied the Declaration, and I thought, wow, what a great thing that some learned people sat down somewhere and wrote a declaration for a country. I come from Australia, of course, which is a penal colony, so we all went there as prisoners. Not in my particular case, and I wish I had gone as a prisoner, because I came as a as a descendant of gold diggers, and they weren't all that honest either. So I come from a pretty checkered history there. But I was shocked at this, and I wrote up this story about how people didn't recognize, most of the people didn't recognize this document, and some people really got angry at me for asking them to sign this petition. And in all due respect, the Cuban Missile Crisis was on, so I'm a foreigner, and I'm asking them, putting this declaration under their nose and asking them to sign it, and they were very suspicious of me just because I'm a foreigner, I guess. But anyhow, the story got published, and within 48 hours after that story came out, I was easily the most famous journalist in America for the next 10 minutes. But 10 minutes of fame in America is worth a lifetime of fame in any other country. So it was just clear sailing. But I had to take a risk. I had to take a risk of being thrown out of that office by bulldozing my way into the editor's office. But if I hadn't got that job, I don't know what would have happened. I would have found a job somehow, somewhere, but I ended up as a reporter for the biggest newspaper in Florida, only because I took a risk. But I took a risk coming to America on a boat that kept sinking too. And when you think of life, you think of all the risks you took, and if you analyze each and every one of them, each risk was worth taking, even if the result didn't turn out immediately the way you thought. It was still worth taking, ultimately. Sometimes it doesn't pay off right away, but eventually it will. I remember when we all remember moments and decisions that we made when we didn't have the courage at the time. And I had one of those moments very early on in my life. And it's the one moment I always look back as a reference, as a book reference to what you should never do. You should never quit. I had, like I said before, I had trouble speaking as a kid, and I haven't shut up since. As soon as I learned to speak by talking to my horse. Dad kicked me out of the house, which was a very good thing to do, and I found myself in the bush. Before I got deported, before I got kicked out of high school for failing grades and every other damn thing, I was a bit of a track star, and I went up to a place called Malanda, where there was a track star there, a miler, and I was doing the mile, and so I went against him, and it's the only time in my life I failed myself. I thought, this guy's stronger than me, so I thought, and I thought I'm on the last lap of it. And he starts putting on a bit of pressure, and I just quit. I pretended I fell over. I just gave it up. The only time in my life I ever gave up anything, surrendered, lack of courage. And that was an appalling thing. And still to my mind today, I still remember that. And whenever I doubt that I'm going to do something, or I've got some doubts about it, or should I try it or shouldn't try it, I think, well, I got an expression that I have in conversations with myself, say, Colin, don't pull a Malanda, okay? Malanda was the town where the race was. So pulling a Malanda is the worst of my life. And I've never repeated that ever again, ever. I always would rather take the risk than pull a Malanda. So I think we've all had those things, and it's a reference point. I think you have to experience failure, and which is a lot of people. We're in a society where failure is, oddly enough, unacceptable. To fail is just not a good thing. But failing for somebody to fail, it just is a misstep before they succeed. Everybody has to fail somewhere to get somewhere. Einstein, he's one of my heroes, and he was terrible at mathematics, and he admits that. And he failed at a lot of things, particularly at maths. But he didn't care because he was a great thinker in other ways, although he didn't think so, which is one of the admirable things about Einstein. He didn't think he was. But lots of people who are very, very smart and have influenced our lives, they changed their minds somewhere along. I was a good friend of Christian Barnard, who was the first surgeon to take out a human heart and put it in the body of another human. It happened in South Africa when I was working for the Johannesburg Sunday Times, and I became good friends with him, and until I revealed that he was dating Gina Lollobrigida. And so he didn't like that. After that, we were not friends anymore. Although I sat in on his operations, and that was fun. But he killed many dogs before he got one dog to accept a heart, and of another dog, and then he moved on to people. And his first patients didn't last too long either, but he did set up a trend. And now heart transplants, although a complete heart is not the thing much anymore, but replacing parts of the heart is standard procedure. It's like taking your car in and saying, well, I got a loose tappet rod here, okay, we'll put another tappet rod on it. So that's how it's turned out with heart surgery. But Barnard made many mistakes, and everybody I know who has done anything has made many mistakes. Yeah, when I first came to America, it was a wild and woolly place. It was very free. You could do anything in this place. And I thought, well, what a country. You can just be what you want here. You don't have to join a union per se. You don't have to belong to a club. You don't even have to have much of an education that I saw. And I certainly didn't have one. Got thrown out of every school I ever went to, didn't pass any exams I know of. But in this country, that's not important. What's important in this country is that you have some degree of integrity and some degree of belief. Everybody is selling something, but you have to have an honest approach, because there are so many eyes today on you that if you're not honest, you get found out in 5 minutes. So honesty is the best policy, only because it really is the only policy that survives anymore. I was very successful as a journalist, but I can't say all of my approach was honest at all. I think it was very dishonest, a lot of it. I was a top reporter for the National Enquirer, and that required getting close to somebody that to a point where they trust you and they're going to reveal things about themselves that they wouldn't even tell their mother, and then they go home and write it up and reveal it to millions of people. That's a sort of a mistrust, really, which is one reason I got out of that business and went into other businesses. It's a fine line, but you have to take risks somewhere. If you don't. The human spirit feeds on risks. Anybody who's done anything has taken a lot of risks in it. And the risks today, they are still considerable, but they were not as considerable as getting a wooden boat 400 years ago, hoisting a sail, and going across an ocean, not knowing where you were going. In fact, the first sailors who crossed oceans were convinced that at the end of the ocean it dropped off to a cliff. So they're sailing expecting to drop off a cliff somewhere. Of course, they didn't drop off a cliff, and then they discovered the world was round. There's no cliffs in it to fall out of that way anyhow. But they wouldn't have they wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have discovered what they did unless they took the risk. And we're doing the same thing, going to the galaxies and taking risks there. Many people have died doing that, and many more people will die before it's over. But everybody who's achieved anything or gained anything has done it at great risk to themselves. America was settled, and the Indians cleaned up a lot of people, but the settlers cleaned up a lot of Indians too. Same thing happened to Australia. In Australia, everybody who owns any land in the world today took it from somebody else, and 1,000 years from now, the whole world will look different, if indeed there is a world 1,000 years from now, because everybody's taken everything from everybody constantly. That's human nature. And it's the risk of war is omnipresent because human beings are without doubt the most violent species on the planet. The only thing we don't do that other animals do is we don't eat what we kill. But that's not always the case, is it? I've been in Papua New Guinea where they do eat people, and they still do. So I didn't get eaten there. But it's without taking the risk, you don't get from point A to point B. And arriving at point B, you may have the gold or you may not. But the experience that you learned developed your character. And one of the sharpest things for developing character is taking risk. And you need to feel. You take a risk with something and you think, wow, that was scary. Well, you got infused with a great power that only the risk can give you. There's no other power that gives you the power that risk does. Big building here, big building there, somebody puts a tightrope there and walks across the tightrope. Well, if they fall, they're going to die, but if they get to the other side, they not die. Well, the person who did that gets to the other side, and he's a different person when he steps off that tightrope. And I find that is always the case. Whenever I ride horses, that's what my life is, horses. Because the horse is a spiritual being, and it reads us like a book. The horse is 50 million years old. They say we are 5 million years old, so at some point we were unevolved, and the horse was highly evolved. And that still goes on today. The horse, people think of, well, the horse that's just an animal. It's not just an animal. It has observed us from every possible angle for 10 times the amount of time that we've been on the planet. The horse far exceeds that. So to say the horse doesn't know about us is really fascinating, because they know everything about us. One of my passions is I like to steeplechase. Steeplechasing is a course of 3 miles. You could generally have 36 jumps, and it's fastest time around. You're racing like a racehorse in a track. Only instead of running on flat ground, you're running with 4 foot jumps, paced 36 jumps, generally around a mile. And I've been in races where people have spent the rest of their life in wheelchairs because they were in the race. But it's that fear. I was on the East Coast in Vermont and on a steeplechase, and this kid comes up to me at the start of the race, and we're all nervous. Everybody's nervous, and he says, "You don't look nervous." And I says, "I am." I said. He says, "Really?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "But you've done this a lot of times." I says, "Yes. Every time I do it, it's another. Grab yourself." And he says, "Well, I'm scared." I says, "That's good." I says, "Fear is your friend. Fear makes you sharper. Fear makes you react quicker." And he says, "Well, where should I be in the race? Should I be in the front or behind?" I says, "Well, if you're in front and you crash, we're all going to go over the top of you. So if that happens, my advice is lay flat. Don't step up, because you get run down." And he says, What happened if I'm in behind?" I says, "Well, if somebody goes down in front, you've got to jump over them or get around them or something. So it's another hazard." and I can see the guy with the flag is just going to drop the flag and he to start the race. And he says, "What about the centre?" I says, "Stay out of there. That's where I am." Well, but galloping around like that, I love that because I am terrified, and the horse knows I'm terrified, and that really drives me insane. I've tried many different ways to fool the horse as to my feeling of terror. I'll take half a bottle of port or something and stock up to the horse and say, "Yeah, well, we're going to knock them dead today, aren't we? Yeah. And the horse just looks at you, and you just know he's thinking, "You're full of shit. You're just boozed up or something. You're full off." So you can't fool the horse. But this kid, we're racing on this race, and we're on lap 3, and sure enough, he comes up beside me, the kid. And I looked at him and I said, "Wow, you're still there?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "This is good." And I says, "Yeah, well, yeah, concentrate. I says, "Give it all you got." I says, we're going to get there. And we're going neck to neck, and I knew I still felt power, that I had a bit of horse going. But yes, I was afraid. Because another jump. Oh, wow, got through that. Another jump, got through that. And you get so with fear and concentration, your senses get so acute. I can hear birds singing, and I'm doing jumps at full gallop, and I can still hear a bird singing. That's how acute your senses get when you are pushed with fear.
Adrenaline is incredible.
Yes. Call it what you want, but it consumes your body, which you can only get if you take chances. You have to take the chance. You've got to do it. And anyhow, I said to this kid as we're coming around the bend for the last lap, I said, "Well, you're doing good, mate, but see you later." Whack! I whacked my horse on the arse and took off and dumped him. But I had a good horse, and I gauged what he had left to the last degree. When he crossed the finish line, he was done, and so was I. But it was a good run. But the fear that you feel is very, very good, but you can't experience that unless you take the chance. You have to take the chance, and you look across a crowded room, and there's a girl you'd really like to jump on. So what do? Well, you're going to say, "Yeah, I want to know her in the biblical way. I'd love to know her." Yeah. So it takes a lot of guts for a guy to go front up and say, "Hey, you doing, love?" "Yeah, all right." You better have a good line. And women don't have to do that. Guys have got to do that. So it takes a lot of anything to do anything. I had the great advantage of not having any formal education to speak of, so nobody got hold of my brain early and made it something, and I didn't have to remember a whole bunch of silly stuff about science or this or that or chemistry, or I just had to learn to write. And that's, if you concentrate on one thing, we all have an enormous gift, but if you concentrate on one thing, you will achieve it. I don't care what it is. You will definitely achieve it, but you've got to concentrate on it and give it all you have. No half measures, and never pull a Melander, as I like to say. Never pull a Melander. Don't ever say no. Don't ever give up, because giving up is the worst thing, because you've deprived yourself of growth. You've deprived yourself of that moment of where your senses are really, really hot and heavy, and they're all tuned up, all your antennas out. You're more alive than you'll ever be in your life because you're taking a risk. And it might be only fleeting, but it is a wonderful thing to take the risk. I ride horses every day, and if I'm a little bored or a little consumed with what I should be doing instead of riding this horse, I'll find a hill, and I'll go down it, a steep hill. And if that doesn't work, I'll find a steeper hill, If that doesn't work, I'll go down at flat gallop and see if that works. Now, not a good idea. That's put me in hospital 3 or 4 times, but I must have good bones because I've never broken any bone, although I did have a few concussions that bother me a little here and there. But so what? So you get concussions, so you break a bone, so you do something, but it's the spirit within us that doesn't break. And that's the thing that mustn't break. And if you keep taking chances, it's like taking vitamins every day. You're doing something somewhere. Take a chance. It might be only a little chance, but take a chance.
It's interesting that some of our biggest failures turn out to be the best things that ever happened to us.
Yes. The girl across the crowded room who turned you down, she went off and married somebody else and took all his money, and that was the end of that. That could have been you. So you don't know. The wonderful thing about living is that you don't know the future. You can theorize on it, and you can contemplate it, and you can hope for it, and you can do all of that. But the future, we don't know. I could walk out this door and drop dead, yes. And I could get on my horse tomorrow and crash and die.
You ride your horse at night, I heard.
Yes, I love nighttime. Once again.
In the dark.
In the dark,
midnight.
Yeah. In the heavy rain and the dark, and I'm notorious for doing it. And I had a guy come to me, flew all the way from England a couple of years ago, and he says, "I hear that you gallop in the night." I'd read some interview I'd given about night vision, and horses have better vision than you, which I don't know if that's true or not, but I like to think it is. So when you're galloping down hills and in rough country, and I like to feel the fear. Give me the fear, God. Give me the fear. I want the fear. I don't want to be dead. I don't want to be saying, "Oh, that's safe." Oh, yeah. If it's safe, why do it? What do you achieve? And this guy came from England, and I had a jump course set up at night time, and it wasn't really a real course. It was just an abandoned area near where I lived, and now it's been all cleaned up into big old gas tanks from service stations around the place, and a wire fence, and some steel rail fences. I turned it into a jump course for nighttime jumping. No lights on it. And this guy was a steeplechaser from England, quite well known. And he says, "Where's the course?" I says, "You're looking at it." And he says, "I don't see anything." I says, "Interesting." I says, "But your horse can see it. Don't worry. This horse has been over the course. So follow me." Off we go. Well, he got off that horse after 20 minutes of that, and he says, "That's the scariest thing I've ever done." He said, "I didn't even know when the horse was taken off until I felt him." I says, "Yes, the point is you felt him. You were feeling the horse because you were not relying on your stupid vision. You're relying on your legs and your feeling, and you got your heart with the horse's heart, and you went and you threw your heart over the jump, and the horse went with you." I said, "That's the key. When you trust the horse, and he's now trusting you. He knows what you want to do, but you've trusted him, and he's going to look after you. For some stupid reason, despite the horrendous history we've given horses, killed them in battle and chopped them up and ate them and did everything else with them, they still love us in the end. I think because we feed them, that's about it. But you can have a relationship with a horse, and it's a bit different to having a relationship with a dog. You pat the dog, and that's good. You pat the dog. Oh, dog loves you, yeah. But you pat a horse, and then you get on it, and you realize that you're 6 feet off the ground, or you're around the horse, and he can kick you, and he'll kick you from here to that wall, and he can kill you. A horse can kill you at any time he chooses, but he chooses not to kill us. He chooses to be our friend, which is pretty interesting. But you don't appreciate the horse until you take risks. And that's with life. I don't care what job you're doing. If you're working on cars, you don't appreciate a car until you've built the engine, and then you don't appreciate what you've done until you take the car to its max, and then you can appreciate it. Or you build a boat, or you're sailing. Well, you've got to sail to its nth degree. as fast as that thing can go. And I rebuilt a motorbike when I was 14 years old, and it was a BSA 650, came from England. It came off the bench doing 65 miles an hour. I shaved off the head, put high lift cams in it, put a big air intake in it, and took it out to a deserted airstrip out in North Queensland, which had been built by the Americans when they were fighting the Japanese for their bombers to land when they were shot up in New Guinea. And I took that bike up to 120 miles an hour, and it was shaking. It was coming apart. But that moment I've never forgotten. That's the total extreme of the Melander. But you need extremes in life. But quitting is something to be avoided because you don't know what you quit. That's the whole thing. You've got to take yourself to the nth degree. Well, that's how I feel about it anyhow. And I'm approaching people who've never met before, who are very, very famous. I've done that all my life too. And people say, well, aren't you nervous about approaching Marilyn Monroe or whoever it was? I said, no, because she's just a person like me. Just like me, only she's organised herself a bit better or a bit different to however. I don't want to be Marilyn Monroe. I'd sure like her to reveal who she's screwing. That'd be a good thing. And then if I can charm her enough, she'll tell me, and then I'll write it, and then I'll give the lawsuit to somebody else. But that's how it goes. I worked for Rupert Murdoch, who was. He hired me because he thought I was a great tabloid reporter, and I didn't consider myself a great tabloid reporter at all. I consider myself as just somebody hungry to know what people had, and I'd get it no matter what. Charm the hell out of them, get them to reveal everything, and then betray them. But that's. Elizabeth Taylor said to me one day, I'm on a plane, we're going from Zurich to London, and she said, she saw me on the plane, and I had been bird dogging her to get on the plane, same plane, and I knew if I can get 3 words from her and print that in the National Enquirer, I'd make a lot of money. And she sees me, she says, oh my goodness, she says, it's you. And I says, yeah, well, okay, what are you doing here? I says, well, flying to London. I guess you're going there too. We're on the same plane. And she says, she says, you're quite a charmer. She said, but you're wasting your time. You're writing scurrilous things about people and terrible things about them, and which disrupts and makes a negative impact on their life. She says, why don't you actually do something? Make something. And I thought to myself, wow, okay. Yeah, well, I just know I've got enough here. She's told me a few things about her next romance with Richard Burton, where they're getting married and divorced, and I'm following that, and it's going all very well. So, but I got home from that, went back to my big house on the beach in Malibu, and I'm thinking, she's right. What have I done? I've done nothing. I just report what people tell me. And I betray them most of the time anyhow. They'll reveal the secrets of their life, and then I might have let them assume that I wouldn't repeat it, but I did. But what have I done? I haven't done anything. Then I thought to myself, well, I'm going to Australia to see my parents and see everybody. And I went on the set of a movie. It was The Man from Snowy River, and which would go on to become one of the great classic horse movies of all time, although I didn't realise it at the time. The director said to me, he said, Colin, he says, I want you to look on the screen. I'll show you our dailies from yesterday, and they got a close-up on the Australian stock saddle. And I thought to myself, wow, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring in an Australian stock saddle. And this is what they look like. This is a classic Australian stock saddle. It's got pulleys here, which means you can gallop like crazy, get up against those. The horse can crash. You stay here, it'll crash, and stay on the horse. Don't ever get off the horse. Horse gets up, and you're still in the saddle. Flop back here and go like hell. Just keep going. English saddles, you fly off. Western saddles, you fly off, and the horn rips you up as you're leaving too. This saddle is designed for high speed, rough country, and for staying alive. We chase cattle with this saddle in 400, 500 miles from a hospital. You better think you're going to stay in the saddle. But anyhow, I got hold of, after my conversation with Elizabeth Taylor, I went to Australia, got on the saddle of the man from Snowy River where they had saddles like this they're riding, and the director said, "Hey, Colin," he says, "I want to show you what we shot yesterday in the dailies." So I go, "See ya." And there's a scene, a close-up of this saddle. And right there, that was it. I had built one of these when I was a kid. My dad wouldn't buy me one on the cattle property, so I went and built one. Took me 2 years. Ended up selling it to the first person who offered me money for it. So I thought, well, that's what I'll do. I should get that saddle and take it to America. So I went from the set of that movie to Said Hill & Sons, who were then the biggest makers of these saddles in Australia. And they thought that I was absolutely out of my mind. I'd had a television show at the time called On View with Colin Dangard. I ended up giving it to Robin Leach, who went on to become very successful with the lifestyles of the rich and famous. But at that point, I'm going to ditch Hollywood. I'm going to get into this saddle. And it was the smartest decision I ever made. Americans are used to their Western saddles, their English saddles. They fly out of one, and the other one weighs 10 tons, and you can't lift the damn thing. The riders were getting older, and they couldn't lift things anymore, and that's still the case. And now they're looking for security. And I'm talking about taking risks. I've actually lowered the risk of riding in this saddle compared with an English saddle. However, what I've done is made the activity that you do on a horse, now you can extend it more and take bigger risks. You can do more on the horse and take risks, but you still got this as a backup if everything goes wrong. And you don't think about this all day riding it. So that's the story, and that made me a small fortune.
You manufacture these in Malibu?
Yes, in Malibu, California. And it's just a wonderful thing. Now, like everything else, things are changing. The people I sold these saddles to in their 30s are now in their 60s and 70s. And unfortunately, for reasons that are very complicated, young people are not getting into horses like we were. They're into video games, they're into this, they're into that, they're into technology, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but technology is certainly has its benefits, but what it's done is taken young people out of activity, out of stuff that is risk-taking. Now you can't. You've got to have a helmet. You've got to have this. You've got to have that. All of that's got its benefits, but the idea is not to take risk anymore. You get sick, take a pill. Things don't feel well, take some drugs. So there's an out for everything, and I think that's the thing we're losing. I'm very concerned about the males of this country. I think they've been emasculated somehow. We used to control the women. Now it's pretty clear the women control us, one way or the other. You can get divorced, and that'll cost you your fortune. You can fall in love again and get divorced again, and that'll cost you a fortune. And you get to the end of your life, and you're living in a tent someplace, and you've got 5 divorces and 9 kids, and the state's always looking for you. It's a disaster. The American male has been pretty much debollocked, as far as I can see. They've been educated from very young not to take chances, not to take risks. Whereas in my life, growing up, risk was everything. You took the big risks. I remember my dad got an idea that he was going to teach us how to swim. I'm one of 7 kids. So he takes us down to this place, down the river. He's going to teach us how to swim. And he's got a flag and a beer. And so we just went in the river and swam on the rapids. And, God, we got washed down. And I had to rescue my brother John, and he came up spitting seaweed and water and everything else. And we finally got out of there after 2.5 hours of being in this treacherous rapids. And there's Dad laying on the bed, having his flagon. Oh. He's teaching us how to swim. I love that. So risk is the thing. I did learn how to swim, and I became quite a swimmer. But you learn to do things by doing them. I spent a lot of time diving off the coast of California, spearing fish, and there's lots of sharks out there. And so, I used to take my son out there, Christian, and I'm then getting divorced from his mother, and things are not too good one way or the other. And I take Christian out, and there's a stingray down there, and we go down, and I'm buddy breathing. I've got a tank, and he doesn't. I've got a hold of him, and he's got a lead belt. I got a lead belt, so I'm sharing my regulator with him. And I thought it was a pretty interesting exercise. He realised that he would die if I didn't give him the regulator, but he settled down. We had a great trust going, and we're down at 60 feet. So, then there's a shark down there, but stupid shark. It's not an eating shark, but I said, "Oh, look, shark, where are they?" So he's seeing sharks. So that was yet another lawsuit that his mother brought against me, endangering the life of the minor child. And that was the start of a long sequence of endangerment. Took him to the outback of Australia, and he got dehydrated because he wouldn't drink in the water because there was a dead cow in it. I said, "Well, get upstream a bit." And he went upstream, and he says, "There's another dead cow up there." I said, "Well, keep going." So he ended up in hospital, being dehydrated. So, it became very clear that I couldn't endanger. I couldn't expose him to danger because I'd end up in a lawsuit again, be taken to court. Endangering the life of the minor child became a ritual. I had about 10 of those, and so that's. But so now he's 55 years old and living with his mother. So I guess he's happy. There you go.
Risk. People ask me about my channel and do I have an addiction? I think my addiction is risk.
It is indeed. What you are doing is very risky. Been there, done that, and it was very risky because you've got to think on your feet.
Yeah, constantly you're challenged in one way or another. You don't even know what's coming.
Yeah, you don't. You have no idea what's coming, and
but I find that exhilarating.
Yes,
at the same time, and you wouldn't get that exhilaration from something safer.
No, you could easily go and get a job working for somebody at a salary with your knowledge and skill, but it wouldn't be the same. You wouldn't be taking the risk, and risk is you do this because you love it.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning at 3:00 and you go, "Yeah, what am I going to do today? I'm going to get that stupid Australian." You go, "Yeah, he'll come over. Yeah, we'll bullshit with him a bit. Yeah, that'll be cool." But you got to think of that. You got to think how it's going to happen, because if you don't think how it's going to happen, it won't happen. You have to think about going forward. Always go forward, no matter what. Go forward.
I was doing this for free, just no money out of it, just spending money to do it for 12 years, I think, while I had my advertising career, and I was doing this for the fun of it. And then when I finally got out of advertising, I realized, what do I want to do with myself? How am I going to spend my time? And I realized that was the most exhilarating thing, one of the most exhilarating things I've ever done.
Yeah, well, you were I remember you being very successful as a purveyor of advertising, and you made ugly people look beautiful, and bad situations look nice, and terrible cars look like they painted on the ground.
A lot of fakery.
Yes, and so you made pretty pictures, but that didn't satisfy you. Not until you went out on your own and risk losing everything, and you probably have. I've lost everything in America twice. Once because I just did, and I was having too much of a good time, running around the world and just having a great time, and I'd rather do that than work. But you just challenge. You need to challenge, and you need to fail to succeed. Point me to anybody who's done anything, and ask them, and they've all had failures. I've had failures. I have like I told the story, I have a standard for my failure, and it's quitting. So never quit. If you don't want the shame of quitting, it's better to have the shame of losing, but you tried. You gave it your best. That's the key. That supported your soul. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be the richest person in the room. In fact, given the preference, I'd rather be the most interesting person in the room. That's got more reward to it. And if you are interesting, you will end up the richest person in the room. But you can't seek one to get the other. You've got to work on yourself. And we're all an experiment in progress. But like all experiments, you have to keep pushing the boundaries and get better and better at it. And sure, you might fail. Einstein failed a lot, and everybody has failed. But to learn from your failure is the critical factor. You can say, "Well, I won't do that turn again because look what happened the last time." But you learn something from it. And the way you make muscle on the human body is to lift a weight against it. Push that weight, and you'll make that muscle really big. Well, it's your mind works the same way. Push your mind, and it gets strong. If you don't push your mind, then it doesn't work. If you don't push your spirit, it doesn't work. You have to push all that, and that'll get stronger and stronger and stronger. For what purpose, I don't know. But because we don't know anything. We don't really know what the future is. But I'd rather go into battle with the sword and the shield than go into battle naked. That doesn't work for me. I want to be the best I can be as I wake up in the morning and go again and give it a shot. Give it a shot. That's what I feel.
All right.
And I'm Colin Dangarden. This is what I did. And this worked for me. But now my riders have got older, so I've got to come up with another plan, don't I? Because my riders have quit. They're quitting because they got old. And there are no young people coming on. So, Colin, think of something else.
Adapting is the...
But don't pull them a lander.
Excellent. Colin, thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
You're amazing as always.